Christian, how you doing?
Christian, I'm doing well. I'm excited for what's going to happen today. Today's episode, we are out at a farm. We're going to learn how to milk cow. No, we're not. That's not where we're at.
There are some farms on the way out here.
There were, actually. We're going to do something a little more different.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. We've got two great guests today, and we're going to talk about Christians and guns and self-defense.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, whoa.
Okay.
Yeah.
So should we get into the cigars and whiskey now or afterwards?
Yeah, let's do that. We'll cue up our intro and get into the conversation.
Okay. So ready, set, and go. We are the Old Fashioned Dad podcast, seeking to love dads and men through the person and work of Jesus Christ, while entering into tough conversations on marriage, mental health, sex, and parenting, all while sipping good whiskey. All right. So, because we're around firearms right now, we're not going to chug this bottle of whiskey, but
we're going to wait till we're on the range for that.
Where's the camera right here?
Not really.
Here's the whiskey
there you go.
That we are going to be sampling. Hillrock Estate Distillery single malt whiskey coming out of Hudson Valley, New York. Fantastic place, and producing some double gold winter whiskey. If you get a chance to check it out, go do so. Mm-hmm. Cigars, we're not really smoking any cigars today, are we?
Yeah, we're inside.
That'd be kind of rude to do that in John's office.
Yeah.
I think.
I mean, he may not mind, but, laws and...
Maybe we can go in the hallway, Troy, later.
We'll go where they're repacking the ammo.
Yeah, and that would be the last time that we're invited back
yes.
to Rainier Arms.
Right. So today our guests are John and Troy at Rainier Arms, which in the firearms community is pretty well known. I wish I'm a firearms. I wouldn't say I'm a firearms. I wouldn't say I'm a firearms guy. I don't have anything customized, but I do have some.
Maybe after today you might.
Yeah. I am a fan of concealed carry and the right to preserve and protect life. So that's kind of
I'm actually looking into getting my CPL because I'm still very new. I'm an infant when it comes to guns and the gun community. At any rate, yes.
Yeah. So. As means of introduction, Troy and John. John, you're the CEO, right? The owner of Rainier Arms.
Correct. Here
in Auburn, Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Would you guys mind giving a little background on Rainier Arms and you guys could kind of take turns or however you want to do it, but
sure.
Just how you got into firearms in general, how your faith plays into the industry that you're in and that kind of stuff.
You bet. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, by the way.
Yeah.
It's nice meeting both of you guys. And for me, I started this business back in 2004 under a different name. I did it for about a year. It was called Tactical Solutions for about a year. And at the time, I didn't know of a name to use. I used Tactical Solutions. It helped out actually quite a bit because it's a name that a lot of companies use. Okay, so when I called and I said I'm John from Tactical Solutions, they'd I heard of you. I know who you are. So it kind of benefited me a little bit. And then after the first year, I thought I needed kind of a more unique name. And so the industry, when I first got into it, was still mainly an industry where there wasn't a lot of Asians in it. There was mostly Caucasians. So calling it Hwang Arms or something like that, I don't think it would have went out very well.
Sure.
The very first time I ever went to an industry show, a lot of vendors would even cover things up because they thought I was Chinese and I would be there to copy their products or whatever the case may be.
Spying on them or something.
Yeah. So it was kind of a early on, type of thing, and that's kind of how I got my teeth wet a little bit. And we picked the name Rainier Arms because it's kind of a generic name, but from the Northwest, and I think people from the Northwest knows what that was from.
Yeah.
And so that's how we got our start. It started because mainly as a hobby. I really enjoyed firearms myself. I got my first firearm when I was 21 years old, and just like a lot of people, they get their pistols. They get when you turn 21, if they're a gun lover like I am. I was interested in a lot of guns. I bought 2 pistols when I was 21, and then started shooting, learned how to shoot, and became a passion of mine to shoot guns, and gradually became buying more and more guns, because that's how these types of hobbies, kind of grow.
Yeah.
Is you just start collecting, right? You start shooting, you start collecting, and I started collecting lots of guns. And it got to a point where I was buying more guns than the money that I had. And so
That sounds familiar.
yeah, so the only thing I knew is I knew business from before, and I thought to myself, boy, if I buy a bunch, maybe I can sell some, and I could get mine for free. And that's exactly how it started. I belonged to a bunch of forums, and I called the manufacturer. The first manufacturer I called, I think, was Rock River Arms, and I found out it wasn't that hard to get a business license. I called them up. To get a dealer's license, account. I called them up and I said, "What do I need to become a dealer for you?" And they said, "Well, if you order," I can't remember at the time, it wasn't a whole lot. And so I ended up buying 5 upper receivers, which is basically an AR-15 comes in an upper receiver and a lower receiver. So I would buy 5 upper receivers. That's what I could buy without a firearms license. And at the beginning, I didn't have a firearms license, firearms dealer's license anyway. And so I bought 5 uppers at dealer cost. I sold 4 of them to my friends, and I got mine for free. Okay. I said, "Man, this is pretty cool. I can do this, And so they got my friends got a little bit of a discount off of retail, and I was able to get my product for free. And then they asked me, "Hey, John, can you get this? Can you get that?" And I said, "I don't know. Let me call and find out." So I called these various manufacturers and was able to get dealer pricing and so on and so forth. So that's how I grew the business from 2004, 2005 to what it is today.
Okay. So I go back to when you said you first got into guns.
Yeah.
Like you said, it was a passion of mine. Like so, I definitely did not grow up around guns.
Sure.
And it's taken, probably within the last 5 years to even get comfortable around guns and even changing some of the mentality for me around guns. And so I'm always kind of fascinated, when people that have earlier experiences with firearms, and they say like it was a passion or it grew into passion. I'm curious, like, did you have a parent or anything like that kind of like, I guess, normalized guns a little bit for you, or? Because I'm Korean American, guns are not allowed in Korea, right? So unless you're in the military and they use it for that, but outside of that, much like a lot of countries, guns are only allowed by the police and things like that. So no, I didn't grow up around guns. Majority of the people in my industry, they have. But for me, it was more of something that I couldn't have that I really wanted to have, and something that was around danger per se, right? So you had seen guns like when you were younger, and you're like, "Man, I really want to know more about this."
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Kind of like when I was young, I wanted motorcycles, really fast motorcycles and really fast cars,
yeah.
and so
is that your red car up there?
Yeah, it is. So I'm one of those guys who's an adrenaline guy, right? Okay. So I just like anything that has a danger, and now I don't think firearms are dangerous at all. If it's a tool.
Yeah.
But at the time when I was younger, I was intrigued by something that went bang, and I can punch holes, or I can blow up watermelons, or whatever the case may be. And so that was what drove the passion of mine.
Okay.
How about you, Troy? How did you get in this? How did you get involved with?
Well, I grew up with guns through my dad and through my grandfather and all that.
So before age 10.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was plinking with a 22 with my father.
Okay.
As early as 6 or 7 years old.
Wow.
And part of it was to take that mystique away from, as a kid, you're always like, oh, I want to try it, I want to see it. You see it in movies or television. And my dad was a big believer of, hey, I'm going to teach you how to, handle a firearm safe, but otherwise take the mystique out of it. So, it's like bang, bang, I've done it. Oh, okay, that's good. Right. And the other aspect is if I ever found a firearm, I would know which end not to point at people, etc.
Sure.
It's just the real basics, the four basic firearms. And then as I grew up and got older, continued with archery, continued with firearms as I grew up all the way through college and all that. And then, like, when I turned 21, started the collection and just kept my passion for firearms as I went through.
Okay.
And here we are and working for a great company and a great individual here, and just continue on.
Sure.
So
Sure, that's great. I mean, like both of you, the first thing I did when I turned 21 was got my concealed carry, went out and got my first, H&K, which is a little rich for a 21-year-old, budget.
Yeah.
You were college broke then, weren't you?
Yeah, I was college broke, so I was.
You're a little
I
above
wasn't-
college
I wasn't
broke
eating
now.
that week, so.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, this. Yeah, I mean, I didn't grow up around them either, but I did join the military when I was 25, and before that, I had some friends that were kind of into them. But I wanted to. I've got a 10-year-old son, and I wanted to kind of teach him the responsibility of it.
Yep,
And
yep.
now there's Eddie the Eagle with their little songs about gun safety for kids. And
That's
stuff.
NRA, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I mean, I guess kind of getting into the conversation a little bit. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
interested. We're considering the expertise of the room. We're novices when it comes to.
I'm not even a novice. I'm whatever comes before a novice. That's where I'm at.
So I'm interested kind of in your guys' with your experience and expertise, and Christian men and I assume dads, I guess what's maybe just kind of riff a little bit on the topic of gun ownership and Christians and self-protection versus sport, just because it's a little bit of a hot button for the last 10 years,
20 years
in America, yeah. With that, and obviously there's different worldviews even among Christians as to what's appropriate, what's not, as far as violence and the role of guns, and is self-defense okay, and Jesus laid down his life and turned the other cheek and all that. I mean, what's your guys' take on being pretty deep in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a passion of mine and something that I believe in, but I don't know when it happened, but it seems like they have made Christian men into pansies, and I don't know when that happened, or
It's been
and
in
of
the
course,
works for a while.
yeah,
It was right around 1994. Not kidding. I don't know.
I mean, of course, I believe in forgiveness and turning the other cheek and all of that, but there's something to be said about protecting your family, protecting your loved ones, and all of that. So I'm a firm believer, obviously, in the Second Amendment and the right to protection, but it is a funny thing amongst Christians. My father was a pastor for the most of his adult life, and is started a missions foundation that I'm a chair of now, and we support maybe like 3,000 missionaries all across the
Holy
world.
smokes.
So
That's awesome.
when he found out that I was selling guns, he freaked out, right?
Really?
Like
Okay.
a lot of Christians do. Like, guns? What do you want to do anything with guns?
Yeah.
But just like anything, once he found out what it was all about, like a gun's a tool, right? Like anything else, like a hammer or whatever. There's bad people with guns and there's good people with guns. Just like money, there's good people with money and there's bad people with money.
Sure.
And so as long as you know how to use this tool, then it can be very effective, right? And we sell so much of our firearms to law enforcement officers, to military, not just ours, but to foreign militaries and things like that, that we believe we're doing a lot of good in the world. So that's what I feel about firearms, and I feel very good about doing what I do. But I do understand that there are Christians who believe, oh no, firearms are bad and violence and evil, and I think so much of that comes from media. And everything that you see. When you see firearms,
Social media especially.
you see typically just bad stuff, bad news around that. You don't typically hear about the 14-year-old boy who defended his family with a firearm, and because he knew how to use a firearm, he was able to protect his family. I mean, there's so many of those types of stories we see because we're in the industry, but the average person never hears about it. The average person never, sees that story. So.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what that's all about.
Right. I mean, if a crime's prevented via firearms, you're not going to hear on the news because there wasn't a crime that was had. So it's
not going to sell.
Yeah. Well, that too. So yeah, it's tough. Yeah.
Something that you were saying there, like I thought kind of resonated with me. You said like your dad's a pastor, and so and you're selling firearms, which is very dichotomous, like the opposite ends of the spectrum, careers, and I, when you said, hey, my dad kind of like had a freak out moment, or I guess I'm paraphrasing, but it kind of resonated with me because when I married into my wife's family, they own apple orchards out in central Washington, and as what's now a growing business, they've developed a small distillery that goes along with it. So my wife and I were Christians, and then people found out we're in the distilling business, and they're like, well, alcohol, that's pretty evil. Should you be in that and promoting that? Because there's a lot of people with that struggle with alcohol and are alcoholics, and alcoholism rips apart families. And so when you're saying like guns are a tool, I'm just like, well, certainly alcohol has it can be problematic, but it's ultimately alcohol is not the issue. It's the man's heart. Human beings' hearts that are oftentimes the issue. So
the abuse and wrongful use of.
God. I don't think God ever said don't drink, right? It says don't get drunk,
yeah.
right? I mean, there's a big difference between don't drink. I mean, I don't drink, but that doesn't mean you can't drink, right? And everybody has a different thing about certain topics and certain aspects of that. But yeah, I mean, in terms of what you were saying, as far as alcohol, there's a huge there's a huge segment of people who think all alcohol is bad, right?
Oh yeah, You've got to be abstinent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think that's true. It doesn't say that in the Bible at all. They drink wine. Obviously, wine back then was totally diluted. It's totally different than wine it is today. But at the end of the day, they talked about being drunk and not to be drunk. So
they just had to drink more of it.
Yeah. and the same thing about money, right? It's like, it's not money is evil, it's the love of money that's evil. So people just like to take certain things and just kind of twist it into our own weakness or whatever and make it bad.
Well, yeah, I think kind of what maybe we're saying or touching on is there's a kind of a religiosity that goes along with a lot of maybe say like gun ownership or alcohol consumption is that people want to behavior mod the particular issue, but God looks at the heart more often than like, did you drink alcohol? And he's going to sit you down in heaven going, hey, you had a little more whiskey than you probably should have through the course of your life. He's looking at your heart, and I would imagine the same's true in gun ownership, right?
You're totally wrong.
Okay, cool.
No, I have no idea.
When we get to heaven, we can ask that.
No, I mean, I think there's a point there. I mean, I think
I'm glad there's a point there.
There's a point there. I'm not sure if it's a good one, but no, I mean, because as we're talking, I mean, what kind of resonates with me, I think when Christians or whatever, come from a perspective of like guns is bad. They're taking an overly simplified view of it, and I think the media, feeds a lot of that because the only time you ever see guns is when there's,
a mass
shooting or something horrific, and obviously that's not good. But like, you don't hear about the knife killings and like places in the world where guns are outlawed and like they're bladed tool killings are way higher than we experience here with gun killings, and like it's the spectrum you look at through. But I mean, kind of getting back to the root of it, guns are a tool, right? And when it comes to supplying law enforcement or military or being able to defend your house, or guns being the great equalizer for women and older kids, that don't have the strength to defend themselves or the skill, martial arts or whatever, it's the great equalizer. And when you're stopping violence with a tool that equalizes what would be abuse and violence towards the innocent, I think that makes a big case for something as powerful as a firearm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a national spokesperson by any means, so I don't memorize all the stats, but there's tons of stats that show that people die of physical violence, meaning with somebody's fist and things like that, way more. I mean, the numbers are so much higher than with firearms. Sure. But those types of things aren't really talked about much. But just like you said, that's from the condition of the heart, right? It's like whether I use my fist to kill you, or I use a knife to kill you, or I use a gun to kill you. If I use my fist to kill you, that's not going to make the news, Not as nearly as much as if I'm going to use a gun to kill you.
Right.
So,
but it's still murder.
It's still murder.
It's still
yeah. That's interesting. I'd love to look those stats up there. I'm sure that you're right. But yeah, I mean, obviously a mass shooting gets a lot more notice, kind of similar to like an airplane. You know, like, do we ever hear about the airplanes that land successfully, you know, every single day? We don't hear about that, right? Because it's boring. But we do hear about the planes that don't land and either crash and blow up and kill everybody, because it's like, it's a total disaster, right? But that's still, like, that statistic is still very, very small in comparison to the airplanes that safely land all the time. So yeah, there's a lot of media hype that goes, you know, and coverage that goes into this, right? I mean, we never want to glorify killing, like we're not doing that, but I know that that's what the media is trying to paint gun ownership and, you know, Christians that own guns with. They're trying to, like, we're glorifying this. Sure.
Well, and I think it could be tricky because if, you know, I mean, you know, Auburn's a suburb of Seattle, and there's, you know, I'm making a broad generalization here, but, you know, with as left-leaning as Seattle is, you know, I'd venture to say the majority of the people who live in Seattle don't own guns, don't know anyone that does, and they see them as scary, you know, scary and bad. And so, you know, with that perspective, you know, they can't really see, like, what the good could be. Like, only bad things are going to come from guns, you know. And like we're saying, you know, it's a tool, and how you use it. And what's the point I'm trying to make here? I was just kind of thinking about some.
We'll come back to it. You'll figure it. I've been wanting to hear from. I want to hear from Troy.
Yeah, you're awful quiet over there.
Yeah, we haven't given you any showtime here.
Well, I mean, take the title of your show. You got Dad in it, and when you look at the statistics of violence, a very high percentage. I don't know the exact numbers, but a very high percentage of those individuals that have committed crimes or violent crimes have never had or lack a father figure in their life, and that's been touched on many, many times. That in today's society is a lack of a strong father figure. Mothers and women have their place in raising a child, and as do the male figures as a father, whether it be a daughter or a son. It's both ways, and I've got a daughter and son, and as does John. And your wife and a together healthy marriage, you strive to raise the best children for society. Morals, whether it be have religion and God-based and religious Christian-based, family-oriented, manners, etc. You know, and be a prolific member of society. And when I say prolific, it's in your giving. It's in your giving back to society, whether it be handing out food to the poor, and also, getting a good education, being a productive member of society. And in today's world, with the various influences of social media and the television, and you've got internet and all these, the kids are bombarded with a lot of different messages. And I believe when you look at the statistics of the FBI and even marriage and counseling statistics, there's a huge lack in father figures.
Yes.
So to just generalize, firearms or alcohol as being, evil, or have bad intentions if you do enjoy or imbibe, is too much of a generalization, because in the end, it's about moderation, and it's about safe handling, whether it be alcohol or firearms. There's a good group of training facilities or training kids on safe handling of firearms. It's a learning base, right? You learn your arithmetic, you learn how to read, you learn how to handle a firearm safely.
Sure.
You learn moderation of alcohol through your parents and how they act, right?
Yeah.
And my wife and I have chosen to, live a life of moderation. And it's everything, whether it be speed of your car, how you spend your money, how you take on every Sunday's church event, whether it be now with COVID, whether it be online or in person.
Yeah.
And it's all about how you live your life in a productive, God-centric, Christian-centric manner.
Sure.
And this moderation principle, like you're applying it to firearms as well.
Absolutely, everything in
No.
your life. Yeah. Well,
No moderation with speed. No moderation
I was
with
just-
firearms. No, I don't agree with that.
John lives a little differently than some of us.
that karma.
But absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I really appreciated what you said there on like the father issue. Like that is so huge, and like there's a number of books that are I mean there's a lot of that to say on that topic, but it's even more prevalent now how much of a detriment to kiddos and future generations when there is just simply no dad. Sure. It's really big, and I see this in counseling a lot. And I mean, there's a lot of like adoptive fathers and stepfathers that do come in and really do heroes work, but the biological dad, when there's a lack of it, I mean, they're tying increases in crime, increases in poverty, increases in teen pregnancy. I mean, increases in physical disabilities and illnesses to fatherlessness. Right. So I mean, it's a huge deal. So and that's one of the reasons why we started this podcast was obviously to emphasize like dads, we care about you and love you, but get your ass in gear and be here. Mm-hmm. Be here and recognize that like your primary identity is a worshiper and a child of God first and foremost, and then here's the stewardship that God has asked you to do. And I agree with you on the moderation thing. Like God's going to give us all kind of like interests and hobbies and stuff like that, and those have to like again to be enjoyed. But I always kind of operate from the place of like, okay, my first identity is going to be in Christ, and then I can enjoy everything else. But it's always kind of a fine line for me because a lot of people. So I have a large social media presence, and people think like, well, you're just the guy that drinks whiskey all the time. That's what you do.
You wear hipster clothes, you drink whiskey.
I wear hipster clothes and I drink a lot of whiskey, and so people are like, well, I mean, that's your primary identity, and I wrestle back and forth with that because I'm like, well, if somebody met me on the street, would they know me for whiskey or would they know me for Jesus? Mm-hmm. But I don't think that Jesus is saying like, well, you need to get rid of the whiskey and your other interests, but I need to be your primary identity. Anyway.
Sure. No, it's a good point. As you're kind of talking about like the fatherlessness epidemic, I was kind of thinking, because obviously the biggest impact is going to be to that kid who's missing, half their family. Is missing the man and their,
right.
The father figure in their life. But it also has larger implications, as we're seeing, culturally and societally with that. It's not just isolated to that family suffering. Like it spills over into society, and I think that ties into even rising gun violence if the numbers play that out. Like, it's not an exposure to guns, whether there's more guns or it's easy access or that the laws are lax. In the 50s and 60s in America, they're teaching firearms, and kids were handling .22s. Like, there's no mass shootings, until, society, basically, I mean, you could follow the trajectory of fatherlessness and the breakdown of the family. I know it's kind of a general scapegoat, but I mean, it's pretty easy to be like, this is the root cause of all these other societal ills and violence and issues we're seeing in society, and I think gun violence and the perception of it plays into that.
I'm sure there's a very strong correlation.
Guns are just the tool.
Again, it's the heart behind the matter.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, the other thing too is like when I talk to my Christian friends who are like, because you'll have Christian friends who are really into guns and Christian friends who are really not into guns, and the ones who aren't into guns, and when we have some honest conversation. The question I ask them, I say, if something really is bad happening, let's say something super bad is happening to your wife right at this moment, would you rather have her have a gun or not have a gun? And the answer is always, I want her to have a gun if something evil like that is happening. We all would. I mean, and who's to say that something horrible like that will never happen to your wife or your child or to you? Like, if this world didn't have evil, then I would say, yeah, we don't need guns. Sure. Or if you lived in a country, like even in Korea, like I would say 99.9% of the population don't have guns. So there, I don't feel like I'm in danger walking into a crowd, into a bad area. Other than the fact that, yeah, they have knives and they can beat me up with a bat. I don't feel like they're going to shoot me, right? But if I go to downtown Chicago or some of these Detroit, wherever, downtown Seattle, if I go to any of those places, I'm a little scared walking down the street, and I'm always carrying my firearms, especially if I have my family with me. Okay, like it wasn't that long, maybe a couple months ago, we had dinner, Capitol Grill. That's a nice part of downtown, but we were approached by some homeless people, and it's not just homelessness. You guys know that, right?
Yeah, sure.
It's so much drugs and other stuff that's involved, and they did not come to us like just
Really nice and polite.
yeah,
Yeah.
they didn't. They were very aggressive, very agitated, and obviously we're trying to avoid situations. So we're trying to avoid situations. But if it got really ugly, I'm glad I had my firearm. That's all I gotta say. Is I've never had to draw my firearm, and I pray to God I never have to. But there's times that I'm really glad I have it.
Better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it.
Well, that's one of the things I think people outside of the firearms community don't understand is like the people who are trained carry, concealed carry, they're the ones that are least likely to use their firearm. They don't want to.
Absolutely.
Like that is the last thing they want to do.
That's absolutely right.
I mean, every time you hear about some shooting online, or on the news, 90% of the time it's going to be someone who shouldn't have had that firearm in the first place.
That's right.
For me, the entry point into even thinking about guns was Sandy Hook in like 2012, and I thought like, okay, I can't not have an opinion on guns anymore. Like and so like, but guns had always been and just gun culture, like it's more male centric. I mean, but you'd be able to tell me if like women are getting into this a little bit more.
Sure.
But
It's got a little bit more machismo.
yeah, but I was always intimidated by guns personally, and just like kind of the men that were into guns. I was like, man, these really seem like dudes.
Sure, the SEALs.
The kind of like the cowboys. I'm like, I don't want to mess with them, and then like I'm not even going to try and talk to them about guns because like they not only just talk about shooting the gun, they'll talk about all the technical specs for hours upon hours upon hours, and they'll tell you like, here's my favorite brand, stay away from this brand, go with this caliber, do this, and I'm just like, oh, I don't even know where to start. And so like there was like this intimidation and scare factor for me to get into it, but when Sandy Hook happened, it was like literally kids getting gunned down. I was like, all right, I got to step into this thing and figure out how to move past this intimidation to where like I'm just nervous to handle a gun. That's not the case anymore, but that was kind of like my entry point. Some of my like what I dealt with, coming into the gun community. You guys are all different. It sounds like you had like positive experiences coming. Like you're growing up with guns. You had a passion like right away. And you got military background. I'm just this weirdo from Seattle.
Well, it's not just you. I mean, there's so many people, especially now. There's so many new gun owners, especially over the last, I would say, couple of years. There's so many new gun owners that's bought guns for the first time. And like my wife, she's not an enthusiast. There's a lot of people who aren't enthusiasts, but once they start learning and training and understanding how to handle it and get very proficient at doing it, she doesn't need to know exactly. She doesn't even care about all the various brands and all the stuff that I geek out about.
Sure.
She knows how to pick up the gun. She knows how to point it. She knows how to shoot it. Right, and she's no longer scared of guns. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
And that's because she understands that it's a tool and she knows how to use it.
Sure. I mean, I would say that's the important thing. I mean, I'm not a gun enthusiast. Like I've got a handful of guns. I know how to use them and service them, whatever. But they're stock. I mean, it's I've got buddies. I mean, Troy. I'm sure you could sit around all day long and talk about the innards of this and that. And you guys work own a company that specializes in customizing higher end firearms. So. But for me, it is very much like I enjoy shooting, and so I'll do that. I'll go to the range. I conceal carry for practical purposes, but outside of that, like I don't get gun magazines. Like I just don't care. So I think there's definitely room. And until you get to that place where like you're so unfamiliar, like it's scary.
That's right.
And I do think there's something about like being. I mean, this podcast is for dads, so I'd say something. As a father. Even if you're not a gun enthusiast, taking responsibility for it, knowing the basics about firearms, introducing your kids to it, so it's not this big scary thing, because I think that's way more dangerous than being too comfortable with something.
That's right.
You know, is the fear of not knowing, and not knowing how something works, not knowing the use for it. Interacting with something that you're just like.
Or live in a very safe area. And always travel and do things in a safe manner where you're always avoiding those types of situations, right? I mean, some people do. Like some people they don't drive at nighttime, and they don't. There's a lot of things that you can do to personally keep yourself safe without having a firearm. But there's other times when, for me anyway, I feel like when I go to certain places, I want to make sure that I have a firearm. But for the vast majority of the time, I'm trying to avoid situations where I never ever need one, right?
Sure, and that's always it's always good to be wise and prudent, but like there's definitely things you can't control, like if someone decides to go to the nice neighborhood and break into your random house, like
that's right.
You can't avoid that, and hope you're prepared for something like that. So.
I think for me, gun ownership really is about self-defense. It could very well evolve into a hobby, like more of an enthusiast type hobby. But like when I look at how God created men are fathers, husbands. Fathers especially are called to protect.
That's right.
And not just a physical sense, but there's a real strong call to spiritually protect. And so like I think that protection can't be just reduced to like one aspect of a father's life. And so like I think that there is that like physical protection that we offer our families, and I think it's important. Like you're gonna protect your wife, you're gonna protect your. Three of us have daughters here. You don't.
No,
you don't have a daughter.
Daughterless, sorry.
Go out and get a daughter. But like I have two daughters, and I'm constantly like, how do I protect these two special lives? And how do I protect my wife? I've got three ladies that I feel a duty to protect, and I think a gun can provide that, and I mean provide that level of self-defense. But I think back to like the olden ages, even before guns existed. I don't think you heard probably too much. I mean, I'm speculating here because I wasn't around, but people going around talking about sword rights or bow and arrow rights or anything like that. It was just like you had it because you needed to protect what was yours. That's right. And you needed to protect your family.
Sure. The world was much more feral. We're pretty isolated in our safe, affluent America. Like that's not how most of the world is, and it's not how America was most of the
If we became more dystopian and apocalyptic, maybe people would change their minds on guns.
I mean, it's funny because you say that we kind of joke, but I mean,
we're headed there.
I don't know your experience, John, but I mean, you've trained with military people and stuff, and I've deployed, and like in my opinion, and from what I've observed, like there's a thin veil. That separates the total breakdown society and what we have now, and all it takes is some cyber attack to I don't know, maybe make gas obscure.
Did that happen?
That might have happened.
That happened, right?
But basically you start making it so that like grocery stores don't have food, gas stations don't have gas, and society breaks down very quickly. You do something where people don't have internet or electricity for a while, and their niceties and scoffing at the need for self-defense and preparation goes out the window pretty quick.
Sure.
I don't know.
I think that was exhibited with a little bit of stress, and people were going out and buying toilet paper.
Yeah, and
it's the tipping point is not very far away.
Right.
Right. So
in our comforts and convenience, lifestyle, like we just think like this is the world's always been, how it's always going to be, and that's not necessarily the case. There's a lot outside of our house that we can't control. That's the supplies of the things we need on a regular basis.
Yeah, like you were talking about earlier, Christian. When as fathers, when we're trying to protect, right, and it's not just the physical needs, right, like. For me, I'm a prepper. Like we have food, we have water, I have silver. I prepare for my future. I have life insurance. I have investments. I buy crypto and real estate. I have all my bases covered as much as I can. Obviously, I trust in God, but I got to do my part, right? Yeah. To protect my family, protect what God has given me to be a good steward of. Yeah. And I think firearms is just a part of that. I'm just trying to be a good steward, protecting the things that God has entrusted me with.
Yeah, I like how you kind of frame that up, and especially ultimately you're pointing back to God, because we see in Proverbs 69. I just love this one. in his heart, man makes his plans, but it's the Lord that determines his steps. And so, like, that verse isn't saying guys don't make plans. It's acknowledging that, you know, men are going to make plans, people are going to make plans, but it's ultimately the Lord that determines our steps. So recognizing that God is ultimately in control with whatever hobby, you know, alcohol, distilling, guns, being a family man, what have you. Like, ultimately we recognize that it all belongs to God. We're stewarding it. Make plans. Be wise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Be wise. Be discerning in what we're doing. I mean, I certainly could go out and buy some more food and prep a little better. Yeah, I don't know. So I wanted to get into the Second Amendment stuff, but I don't know. We might be pushing the clock on this one.
John can address. I mean, what kind of questions do you have? I mean, that's...
Well, I don't know that I have like a really specific one, but I know that when it comes to when you get into the gun community, you're gonna hear about 2A. You're gonna hear Second Amendment stuff, and kind of the thoughts and the spectrum, or the spectrum of thoughts on that particular constitutional right. I mean, widely vary. Widely vary. Like I've talked with people that they're like, I should be able to have like the same weapons that the military has. I should be able to have that because at any moment the military is going to come knocking on my door, you know. So if they have a tank, I should be able to have a tank. And I'm like, okay. I don't know if that was the original intent of the Second Amendment, but maybe that's your interpretation of the Second Amendment. But it seems like the thought spectrum is very, very varied when it comes to the Second Amendment. But you guys obviously being more experts in the community, having to deal more with the Second Amendment, your thoughts too? Yeah, you've got thoughts too, but I don't want to hear from you. I hear from you enough. Yeah. But I'd love to hear from, I don't know, Troy, what do you...
No, I'll let John know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are both sides of that, right? Like, do I believe that we should have the full right to defend ourselves from a tyrannical government? Absolutely, I do. But it's more than that. For me, it's not about should I have a tank. Yeah, I should have one. But for me, it's more of I believe that God gave us all life, and we have the absolute right to protect that life. And whatever tool, whatever you want to use, whether it be a tank, whatever it is, I have the right to protect my life. And so those are things that it's called inalienable rights, right? That God has given us, that people can't take that away from you.
Yeah.
And I believe that's what the Second Amendment was all about. It's like these inalienable rights that God has given you. It's not somebody else giving you. Like, they didn't give you the right to drive. I mean, it's not those types of things. It's the right to life.
Stuff that exists pre-government.
Correct.
Pre-government, no one can give it to you because God
gave it to you, right?
So no human should be able to take it away. Yeah.
That's absolutely what I believe in for the foundation of the Second Amendment. So, you know, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the way I believe.
Sure. I mean, I think it's the most probably concise and to the heart of it that I've heard. You know, obviously you go down rabbit trails of, you know, legal experts, you know, constitutional law and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you know, the framing of the Constitution was to protect the God-given rights, the unalienable rights. And we were talking about that on the way over here. Kind of, you know, what actual natural rights are versus what people are calling rights these days. You know, you know, and, you know, if someone else has to provide it to you, it's not a natural right.
Absolutely.
So food, shelter, healthcare, like those are not natural rights because someone else has to go to school, prepare, provide, and then give it to someone. Like.
Yeah, and a lot of times, you know, it's like they take it away from you to give it to them, right? And that's not necessarily a right. I mean, that's a benefit per se. Sure. It's certainly not a right.
Right, and that's a different discussion, you know, as opposed to your life where no one should have the right to take that away from you. So
that's absolutely right.
Absolutely.
Do you have anything to add on that, Troy?
No, I mean that's pretty much. I mean, it's the Constitution is the Constitution. It's what our country is based on. It's freedoms that we get to enjoy that you look around at many other nations. And there's a reason why people want to come to America, is because we have those rights, because they've experienced. I have many friends that have escaped communist regimes and countries, and so they see the benefit of the rights that we are given as U.S. citizens, and protection against a tyrannical government, anything that suppresses the people's right for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so there is that foundation and that 2A goes in with it. That's just, we enjoy our free speech. You can say what you like and not be jailed or executed for it.
Yeah.
And we have the Second Amendment and, Fourth Amendment and all that goes along with the pursuit of happiness in a safe society. And so what we are seeing and witnessing right now is some challenges to that, internally and also externally, that we see at the borders. And so at the end of the day, we sleep at night because we have guys that are willing to do those things to protect what we garner and cherish so close.
Sure.
And in at the end of the day, it's also being able to be good fathers and good mothers to the children under a blanket of security that these men and women in military and in government aspects of the government are providing for us in the dark of night.
Sure. No, I mean, I think you make a good point, because we live pretty comfortable, affluent lives, and it's only because there's segments of our government society that are willing to keep evil at bay, essentially.
That's correct.
And that's, and the only way to fight that violence is with, good men who are willing to, execute similar violence in our position.
Or make the ultimate sacrifice as well.
Sure.
So I'm in the law enforcement military sector of the business, and we work closely with many of the different aspects of the military and law enforcement. And we had a group of guys that came from a detachment, and they were getting ready to deploy overseas to do what we say is some of God's work to keep our freedom. And we set them up with some of the gear that we provide, and they went overseas. They got into a skirmish, and all of them survived. A couple of them came back to say thank you personally, but they brought their wives, and it was like, okay, this is interesting. Wasn't quite sure what the meeting was, because they were like, hey, we'd like to come by and meet with a couple of your staff that you, Troy, and a couple of the others helped us. I says, sure, come on by. We'll make time for you. And they explained what actually happened during the mission, the stressors, that it was quite violent, but the equipment we provided them saved their life. But they brought their wives because the wives wanted to say thank you personally to us. That is a full circle of thanks right there. It was like, wow. And it got emotional by the wives, because they said, without your gear that you provided our husbands may not be here. So it was like, a testament to go, we're doing okay. We did the right thing in that case.
Yeah.
We provided the goods to bring them back home. So there is a bit of job satisfaction, so to speak, in that aspect. And John has been in the business, and he founded the business, and it's a Christian-based business. Almost all of the individuals that I know are Christian followers of Christ.
That work here employees?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's not a precursor to work here or anything like that.
Yeah,
but
sure.
One of the things that we do is before every meeting we pray, and there's we don't leave God out of the business, and I think that's one of the reasons why our businesses have been blessed, for sure.
Sure. Oh, that's awesome. Man, I mean, I think that's a pretty good note to end on, unless you have something extra to
No, no, I don't. I think that we want to end with, like, these are some strong voices right here in the gun community and followers of Christ, and so I think it's I've felt blessed by you guys being able to share your thoughts and opinions on this, and even just testimonies, because I think that it's going to be helpful. It's helpful for me personally, but I think it's going to be helpful for our listeners to hear, two men, fathers, husbands, in like responsibly and wisely in the gun world.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that's really awesome. And I think what I really loved, I heard from both of you kind of in different ways, is like, man, God's in charge.
Mm-hmm.
God's in charge. And so like that's our primary focus, and He's going to be in everything. So like you just said, we pray, we bring God into this, here, because Rainier Arms belongs to God, just like my counseling business belongs to God, my family's orchard and distillery belongs to God. And so I think that, man, that is, and we're going to take that particular principle into our families and our marriages and how we protect and defend our families. So I don't have anything more to add other than that.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
if any of our listeners want to check out some of your fine hardware that Rainier Arms provides, what's the best way to do that?
It's RainierArms.com is the easiest way to do it. We're an online store. But I would like to add something else other than the plug. Thank you for letting me say a little plug. But the thing for me, like you said, Christian, why everything belongs to God and all of that, like the reason why my number one purpose for this business right now is I can do two things. And I tell this to my staff all the time. One is I want to donate enough money, which is a personal, I don't know if I can say it on the air, but it's basically $1 million a year. I want to donate $1 million a year to missionaries. Okay, that's our personal goal. And the only way to do that is if my business generates more than $1 million a year, right? It's got to generate enough income for me to be able to give that. Number one. Number two, I'm growing my business because I believe my gift, God gives all of us different gifts, but my gift that God gave me was business. I understand business. I enjoy business. It's something that I take a lot of pride and joy in. And I want to use this gift to grow it so I can give my business teammates opportunities, right? Because otherwise, like, if you work for a normal job, the only way you're ever going to get promoted or move up is if somebody above you dies or quits. And I just think that's a bad proposition. So the only way to give my teammates opportunities is for me to grow my entity, grow my business. And so those are the two reasons why I'm so passionate about what I'm doing. I'm not so passionate about guns per se. I'm more passionate about business, to be able to give more to God, number one. Number two, create more opportunity for my teammates. That's, I think if we're all, as Christian men, just living our purpose, then God is right there with you, and I think He can be honored by that.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's a great note to end on.
Yeah. Well, John, Troy, thank you so much for being on. And if there's an opportunity in the future to do something again, we'd love to have you back.
Yeah. Do you guys have a range here?
No, just the warehouse here.
Okay.
Range is in Wichita.
Gotcha. Okay. So you'll fly us out to Wichita to go to the range?
Yeah.
Part two.
That's right. So listeners, dads, moms, kids, I guess if you're listening, that'd be kind of weird. That'd be weird. We love you. We're praying for you. Please do reach out. All your words are very encouraging to us that you've reached out on Instagram, Facebook. Not so much on YouTube, but
not yet.
But we'll be there, and we are there. But come and follow us there. Check us out on the socials, and certainly if there's a topic that you would like us to cover, we'd be happy to cover that. In the meantime, please do go check out RainierArms.com. Go check out a good glass of whiskey from Hillrock, and we don't have any cigar suggestions for you today, but go smoke something that's good, not anything that's crappy. Don't do that. But until next time, guys, stay cool.